Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted that you are all able to join us for the digital launch, the first digital launch of our Status of Young Women in Scotland. I'm Patricia Kupiec. I'm the director of the Young Women's Movement. And here's my dog, Lulu, making an appearance. And I will just get us started by providing like a brief intro to the research before we start chatting with our panelists. So this is the fourth edition of our Status of Young Women in Scotland research, which offers important snapshot into how young women in Scotland feel. This year, we wanted to explore what young women identify as contributing to their negative body image, and what needs to change to encourage young women to feel happy, confident, and accepting of their bodies and appearance. Young women are shaping Scotland's progressive future, while we are battling with oppressive patriarchal structures, which tell us that the way we look dictates our worth. Poor body image affects our health and wealth, distorts our relationships, and limits our confidence. Unattainable ideals perpetuate inequality, absorb our time, energy, and money, suck the joy from experiences with friends, and set the tone for our engagement with the wider world. It's time to break this vicious cycle for ourselves and for future generations, and we are really excited to be part of this important work. In an effort to lead the change needed for young women to live with greater body acceptance and more positive body image, we have committed to the following actions. We will use our platform to galvanize the body positivity movement in Scotland and feature a diverse range of women and girls. We will campaign for better education on social media's impact on mental health, self-esteem, and well-being. We will expand our work to open conversations around puberty and menstruation. We will campaign for changes to the public health narrative around obesity and dieting. And finally, we will support other organizations to create safe spaces for young women to have conversations about body image, to create a more positive culture around it. It is our hope that in highlighting these issues faced by young women in Scotland, we will see a shift in the societal approach to discussing young women's bodies. As an organization, we were invigorated by the positive reaction from participants for starting this much needed research and conversation and removing the taboo of discussing our bodies in personal terms. So just before we get started with our amazing panel to discuss some of the themes uncovered in this report, I wanted to say massive thank you to the Lines Between, who have been coordinating this research for us since 2015, our brilliant team of volunteers, Zoe, Sorsha, Ailey, Rachel, and Eve, our extremely talented illustrator, Pilar Garcia de Leanis, and our funders, Paul Hamlin Foundation and Esme Fairbairn Foundation, without whom this work wouldn't have been possible. So now I'm really excited to introduce you to our amazing panelists. I have short bios for all of them, but I think it's time for me to stop talking, so I'll let them introduce themselves. So maybe starting with Vanessa.
Hi there, I'm Vanessa Kanbi. I'm a 27-year-old mum of two. I am also a filmmaker. I've got my own YouTube channel and I've created content for the BBC, CNN, that sort of thing. I've also got my own podcast called Magnificent Mothers, where I interview moms about their life stories and experiences. Prior to all that, I modelled for, well, I do it a little bit here and there, but I did it for 10 years, pretty much like full time. So that's where body image really came into my life from a young age when I was like 12 years old.
Amazing, thank you. And next up we have Kiana.
Hi, I'm Kiana Kalantar-Hormozi. I'm an activist, filmmaker, and artist. I'm working on getting some music tracks for my album, which I've been doing for a long time, but I promise I am working on it. I'm mostly worked in kind of documentary films and kind of raising awareness on issues like the terror attacks, which you might have heard of my film Taxonomy. And yeah, I think body image is just really important to me in terms of how I view myself, and also just trying to work towards being the healthiest version of myself, and especially changing how others view me as well. So yeah.
So, thank you. And then we have Danni.
Hi, I'm Danni, and I run a project called the Chachi Power Project. And I have been running that for 3.5 years now, since 2017. I started it as a sort of short-term project because I had had a change of attitude towards my own body at the age of 33. I'm now 37. And I thought that if I could do it, then I might be able to help others do it. And when I started my project, I kind of learned about the world of body positivity and never had come across it before. And ever since then, I've been trying to learn about it, spread the word about it, understand it more, and understand my place in amongst it all. And hopefully the whole aim of my project is to try and help people be a bit happier in their bodies and for everyone to treat other bodies with respect.
Thank you. And then we have Rosalind.
Hi there, I'm Rosalind Main. I'm an art student based in Edinburgh. I'm studying a master's in contemporary art practice, and the theme of my work is based on women, self-image, consumerist cultures, and body image as well. I'm also a fashion model. I've been modeling since I was 15, so I've been growing up doing work in front of the camera and learning a lot about body image and my own experience through modeling. And since 2017, myself and Morgan McTiernan, the two of us co-founded the I Am More Than project. So it's based in Scotland, but now it's more international because Morgan's based in Australia. So now we're doing lots of work on embracing diversity in all forms and all abilities, a creative campaign where people can contribute and collaborate with each other. So it's a campaign that brings together a lot of different perspectives and aims to just educate and inform people on body image and self-confidence.
Brilliant, thanks. And last but not least, Kaitlin.
Hi, so I'm Kaitlin Hutchison. I'm 24 years old and I live in Glasgow. I run my own page and I also run a page called Furious Fatty. I started Furious Fatty really just out of frustration that fat people were not really given the recognition and the space that they deserve within the body positivity movement. So I just really wanted to have a space that was for fat people. It was for people who don't fit, you know, the acceptable plus size kind of categories. And yeah, I've had, you know, I'm a fat woman, so body image is something that I've had to be confronted with since, you know, a really young age. So yeah, I'm just hoping that this gets watched by lots of young women who maybe have their own body issues. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you so much. I'm such a big fan of all of you. I've been following all of you for a wee while, and I was really looking forward to meeting you in person, but this is like the close second, I guess, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person to kind of celebrate this research at some point in the future. So I will get us started with a couple of questions, and now it's an opportunity for the audience to start sending questions in, and then we'll see how that goes. So the first question from me is, could you tell us a little bit more about your own body positivity journey? And whoever wants to start.
I don't mind starting. So like I said, I am a fat woman, so I kind of move through the world a little differently than thin people. And I think it's important to start off by saying that, you know, body image issues, like everybody has them, but that doesn't always equate to the systematic oppression that fat people actually face. So my body positivity journey has been a very long one. This didn't happen overnight. It all started with being on Instagram and seeing people, you know, who had bodies like mine being confident and being happy, and that's really where it started for me. So that representation was, you know, vital when it came to me learning to love my body, really.
Is there anyone else who wants to contribute about their own journey?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think that mine is very complex, and I'm still on that journey. Obviously, kind of being in a wheelchair, people view me differently. So there is that aspect of it, and then there's the other aspect of, you know, I went to a dietitian to check up on my health as a young child, and I was told to diet at the age of 9, 10, which I really think is detrimental for my health and so many other children. So there's that aspect, and obviously being foreign as well, just getting bullied at school. And I think the fourth aspect is that because of my disability, I do struggle with my health as a whole. And I think health and body image is really related. So just trying to be healthy, but also not criticize myself and not feel like I'm beholden to like airbrushed standards. I guess right now I'm really into skincare, and I really want to emphasize the word care, because I used to be on tablets for many years that were harmful to my health just so that I wouldn't get acne. And I realized, what on earth am I doing? This is actually not healthy. So yeah.
That's nice. I think Dan, you wanted to add something, and before Kiana started.
Oh yeah. So my story is that I always considered my body not good enough, either from telling myself it for many years or from being told certain things, and you know, just learning from our very sort of toxic culture that we all exist in. And then in 2016 I did a few courses and kind of had a change of attitude towards my body through some realizations and self-development work, and then I started, and so that was like really empowering and helpful to me. And yet I found that over time I was slipping back into old ways because we live in this culture that is around us all the time. So I started this project. I started learning about the body positive movement. I learned why we do feel the way we do about our bodies. I learned about why I felt the way I did. I felt that the way I felt, I found out that the way I felt was so super normal across the board, that everyone struggles, that people that I went to school with also felt the same way as I did, but we never discussed it. And I think part of it is being open about it so that we can actually realize that this is normal, and you're not unusual for feeling the way you might do. I think there's a lot of comfort, as sad as it is to hear that it's so prevalent. I think there's a lot of comfort in knowing other people are experiencing as well. But then also recognizing like the privilege that my body has, that whereas it's not, it wouldn't be considered a certain, it wouldn't be, you know, I'm still not seen as an acceptable body to a lot of people, but I'm also like able-bodied, I'm white, I'm you know, I'm straight-sized, you know, so I'm learning all about that and have been for the past few years, and kind of recognizing, you know, how that affects my relationship to my body and other people's relationships to my body, and that.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of other things where, you know, when I was younger, I used to watch television programs with like fashion models or like America's Next Top Model, and it always seemed to have some sort of element of, body shaming on other people as well, being like, nothing is perfect. So it was looking at perfection, and it's just when you're that age and like an impressionable mind watching these programs, it makes you start to then look at yourself. And I find that from looking at sort of consumerism and all these cultures led with, you know, people need to buy them, well, people are being like told to buy things to look a certain way, or to, you know, to strive for perfection when it's not there, is something where I started my journey from looking at how things just, you shouldn't have to change yourself to be happy or to settle for something else, because it doesn't guarantee happiness. Chasing something that isn't a solid guarantee. So there's being happy within your own self is something that's a journey that for me, for my body positivity journey, has definitely led to the power of being able to do something because you're happy in yourself, and discovering more about yourself in that journey is a good way to go.
Yeah.
I would definitely mirror what you're saying, because I think actually whatever size you are, you're probably just going to still feel the same way unless you actually do inner work on why you're feeling that way, or whatever issue that you might have. And for me, the journey probably started when I started modeling. I started quite young, when I was 12, and from maybe a bit older than that, 15, I was sort of told, you have to really start thinking about your size. Like, my hips were always too big, you know, for them. So, and actually the size that they wanted me to be was never really attainable for me. So it was just like chasing the numbers that actually didn't work for me. And I got, like, I went to a really great agency and basically went in, and in front of like all of the bookers, like the owner measured me and was like, oh my gosh, who brought in this girl? She's massive. Bearing in mind, I was literally like a size 8 at that time. So, you know, like it's those sort of pressures. And I'm actually not a very like impressionable person. I'm quite stubborn. So it didn't bother me. At the time, I didn't really think it bothered me. But now, when because I'm comparing to sort of like things I was told for so many years, I do realize how it's impacted me. Because when I look at my body now, I'm obviously comparing to what people were telling me wasn't good when I was even like, you know, 3 stone lighter than I am now. So it's, you know, it's the impressions that people put over the years that have probably had an impact on my body image. But then when I had my kids, obviously that then changes things completely again, because I realized that how amazing my body is, that it was able to, you know, grow kids, carry kids, and then give birth. And I think that really brought gratitude to my body and what it was able to do, which really changed my perception again.
Mm-hmm.
That really resonates with me as well. And it's interesting, like we had a panel earlier with one of the researchers who conducted this research, and one of the questions that came up from the audience was about kind of including body positivity and school curriculum. And it's interesting that so many of you kind of mentioned that it started so early, and it's the same thing that came up from the research, that you know, girls really, not even young women, started to feel really, and I definitely can think about dieting first when I was, I don't know, maybe like 9 or 10, when you start, that was like the first time that I started to feel like I don't fit that mold quite the way that I thought that I should. So that's definitely something that we also want to campaign for. And I think that's like a really valuable lesson from this research, which takes me really nicely to the next question. So what surprised you the most about the findings of our research, and was it better or worse than you expected when you read the report?
I think just about the same, really. I wanted to be shocked by what came out, but just because, you know, I experience body shaming on a daily basis because of, you know, the work I do on Instagram, and, you know, there's a lot of violence online against women in general, but especially when it comes to fat women, and then again when it comes to women of colour. And yeah, I wasn't surprised, because that's how I felt when I was that age. You know, I was like, well, of course they don't want to exercise, and they don't want to, you know, go to social events. Of course they don't want to do these things, because that's exactly how I felt when I was that age, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was probably the most shocking thing for me, was that it was, what was it, 54% said that they didn't want, 56% said that they didn't want to exercise. I was really shocked at that, because obviously it's like a perpetuating cycle of, you know, exercise obviously helps your mental health, and if you feel like you can't do that, then, you know, it doesn't really help.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. And I think so many people are told you need to work out and you need to look better, but then when you do exercise, you're shamed for it, because you don't look how you should look when you're working out. You're not wearing the right outfit, you're not doing this, you don't look perfect. So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
I mean, for me, I agree with you guys. Unfortunately, none of it was surprising. Like, I think someone externally who's maybe not really learned much about body image might be shocked by some of these stats, but if you work in the industry, you work in the area like all of us do, you won't be surprised to see these figures and to see these 80% of people being dissatisfied with their bodies. Mm-hmm. And it's heartbreaking, but it's normal, and it reflects my experience as well. One thing that was really shocking to me is in the UK, the percentage of women of colour using face lightening creams. There was a number, and I only managed to figure out the percentages when I sort of looked at sort of the number, the breakdown of ethnicity at the back of the report. and it said, 11 women admitted to having used face lightening creams, and 3 said that they might use it in the future. And I was thinking, okay, and then it said, that's, it's not a massive number. And I said, well, it's not a massive number, but unless you look at the actual percent, how many people of color were on the survey. And actually I did the maths, and out of the total number of people in the survey, 70 of them were considered, non-white. And so that actually 14 people out of 70 is 20%, and 20% of people feeling the pressure in this country. That is really shocking to me. Apart from all of the weight loss stuff, and that was like a stat that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah.
I found that the fact that what shapes body image came up for 64% was Instagram was such a high, because it's obviously, I agree with Danny saying it's not a surprise to see where the percentage is going on more of a negative side, but for it to be that high a percent on Instagram is just something where I can't help but think about the amount of, just the stress and anxiety that app can bring to people when it comes to how people want to be portrayed online, and just how much pressure that can lead. And we're seeing, you're seeing the apps, they are updating themselves, being removing likes and removing follows, but I feel like there still needs to be a lot more done for it to be an effective way, because people do really, there are people that can put a lot of pressure on their image because of this app, which is something that definitely needs to be considered more when it comes to people's self-image.
Yeah, no, Instagram was by far the worst in terms of like an influence. We were surprised by it as well, because obviously you have so many kind of positive stuff that comes out of Instagram, all the body positivity movement and fat activism, and you kind of like create that bubble for yourself. So I perceived Instagram as quite positive because of the people that I follow on Instagram. So for me, it's this like really nice echo chamber of like really positive feminists. And it's, and I kind of forgot that this is not an experience for everyone. This is a very kind of curated experience that is specific to me, because I made sure that this is this way. But for a younger person, if you want to make sure that you get like loads of likes, because I really don't care. Like this is, I have like, I don't know, 600 followers or whatever. I'm not an influencer, but as a young person, if you want to achieve that bigger platform, it must be really, really stressful, and that was definitely reflected in the research.
Yeah, because it's another, you can curate your Instagram to suit, if you're into creative accounts or political accounts, you can follow what you like. But there's a lot of these, reality TV programs, and like things like Love Island have Instagram attached to it as well. So it's that there are people that, it's not everyone curates their pages to suit, things that are uplifting or inspiring for them. It's more on a sort of comparison scale when you see these reality TV stars sort of posing a life that it's poised and ready. It's like it's the amount of takes it gets to have that image, when it's not. There's a lot of work behind that, but I feel like a lot of people might not see that an image is, it's a full day's work for some people, where it isn't achievable, and it's it's bringing the reality into that. I mean, these are images, they're not a reflection of yourself, they're not a reflection of your abilities. Just bringing perspective. And I feel like now, especially during lockdown, curating your platforms or who you follow into something that's far more positive is definitely better for a lot of people's mental health.
Yeah.
I feel like sorry.
No, is it overall, like, I wasn't surprised, but it was actually slightly worse than what I thought it would be. And I was actually quite surprised that, there are some days where, I don't feel that great about myself, blah, blah, but overall, I'm actually in a slightly better place, and that did surprise me. But we live in a world where everything's photoshopped, and there's 10 people doing hair and makeup to make sure whoever's on camera looks awesome all the time, and nothing's real anymore. So
so I think I will just ask one more question, because I can see that there are questions from the audience coming in. So this is the question about that kind of the saddest stat from the research, I think. that showed that 80% of young women who responded to our survey felt that their body image had stopped them from doing something or negatively impacted their confidence and limited their life choices. What do you think needs to change in Scotland to improve young women's body acceptance? So it's a big one, and I totally agree with you. Like at first when I saw that stat, I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. But then when I read all the experiences, I was like, yeah, this is pretty much my experience of growing up. So I would have answered the same. So then it kind of puts it in perspective that I think it's a shared experience, even though the number is so high. But yeah, I would love to hear from you. Like, what do you think? Like, what actions we could take?
I think first of all, oh sorry, Vanessa, you go.
I was just going to say, I feel like here in the UK, this isn't something that we spoke about, as you were saying, like at school or when you're younger at all. It's like now that we've, you know, got an awareness at like 20, 30 plus, now we're starting to talk about it, and it's kind of like, I'm not saying it's too late, but you're an adult, you know, like a lot of your like memories and stuff have already been formed. So I do feel like it should come in much earlier, you know, like having young kids. I think it should come in when they're 5 and 6, you know, that sort of age, discussing what it's like, but also discussing with parents that what they say has such an impact on their children. Because I know for a fact, like some of my friends when I was younger were heavily influenced by the things that their parents were saying to them negatively. And actually that was in the stats. It said that parents and family have a big impact. So I think, you know, I don't know how it could be done, maybe through when schools have their like parent meetings, you know, they could just say to the parents that what they say to their children literally shapes them. So think about what you're saying before you say it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think, even like how you talk about yourself in front of your children, because that was like one of the things that also came up of from the research. And like that's like where like a lot of my body insecurities came from. It's just like how my mom talked about her body when she was like way smaller than I am. So I think like, yeah, it's so important. Like I totally agree with that. And the research actually highlighted that it was like negative impact of moms. Which I was so sad to see as a new mom as well, that like moms were specifically it was specifically emphasized that the way that they were speaking to their daughters about their bodies had such a negative impact.
Yeah, I think when we talk about what can we do, the first thought is always about like, okay, education. We need to reach them younger. We need to have more of an impact. We need to open up the conversation. And that is so super important. And I have worked on and read many resources that are used in schools and not used in schools yet. And I think we're not doing well enough there, but there people are moving and developing those things. I 100% think it's to do with parenting and parents. And I mean, not 100%, sorry, that's totally not a legit figure, but a massive amount is to do with parenting. And unfortunately, we don't have access to parents very easily. We don't have access to educate parents very easily and change the way that they speak about bodies, the way they speak about their own bodies and the way they speak about other people's bodies in society. And it has been shown that the research shows that your parents and your peer group are the two biggest influencers on the way that you feel about yourself and the way that you see society and the way you see yourself. And so I think there needs to be a massive overhaul in the way that we tell parents they're allowed to speak to like around their children. Like there should be campaigns about it. This should be government led. You know, this needs to be a sort of, I've seen other governments do it. Tasmanian Health Board brought out an incredible video about how we should speak to our children about their bodies and about our own bodies. And I was like, this is amazing. This is like a government level agency bringing out a perfect video. And I was like, oh, I'd love the Scottish government to do something like that, because that's the only way we can reach parents. We can't educate very easily. And there's no way that we can, you know, feed it to our children in the hopes that it goes up the way when they leave school, because that's not a child's responsibility to do that. And also it's not very effective. And also, you know, as much as a child learns in school, they can go home and it could be undone in a second, because that person at home is their idol, you know. So if a parent says something off the cuff, it can undo like any work that a teacher is doing in school.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think one of the most important things, like when we talk about body image, this is often underlooked, and I feel like what we need to do is get to the root of it, and that is fat phobia, the fear of becoming fat. That's where a lot of these issues arise from. You know, it is still perfectly acceptable to make fat jokes in TV programs. It's still seen as one of those things that you can just make fun of somebody's weight and how big they are, especially the bigger the person gets. And this is especially true when it comes to diet culture and things like that. We can't unravel those things until we get to the root of that, and that is the fear of becoming fat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you saw the Scottish Police brought out a campaign about all of the different ways that they are going to clamp down on hate speech, and they brought out all of these amazing posters that were like about bigotry, about transphobia, about racism, and I'm like, but the last acceptable form of hate speech is about what you're saying about other people's bodies. And I was like, I even tweeted them and said, oh look, I've worded an advert for you, why don't you just use this and like add it in, because I think it's so acceptable and it's so awful.
Yeah,
even Peppa Pig, they constantly talk about the dad, about like, you know, the way he looks and like the size he is. And how is that okay for, like, you know, that Peppa Pig's aimed at basically 2 to maybe 4-year-olds. So from that age, they're being fed that actually it's not okay to be a certain size.
Yeah.
yeah.
I also think for social education in school, I feel like it's a subject that definitely has a lot more potential than what is already there. I feel like there should be more education on the use of social media, as well as that being a reflection of people's self-image as well, and being taught on how to use that in a healthy way as well, because there is only so much you can do in school. But I also feel like the habits, you know, when I was at school, I didn't have the Facebook app on my phone, so I wasn't online as much as students are now. So it's that, you know, it's the all access part and choosing what to put out there, but also, you know, just the education side of being like the, you know, not focusing too much on social media being too much of a serious thing. I think definitely stepping back from that and spending more time on the subjects you really care about. And I feel like for the whole the body image as well, looking at subjects that really do influence you as well, and just educating yourself in different ways. That doesn't have to be not just, definitely in school as much as outside of school.
I think as well that obviously education is so important, but representation, as I feel like we are, like, in some ways we're coming home from work or school or whatever, and we're interacting with media 24/7 all the time, and we're not switching off. So in some ways that is influencing how we view the world just as much as what our teachers or what our parents are saying. It's difficult because obviously we need better representation, but then, for example, some videos that I did for BBC Social, I had like a lot of hate just about the way I looked. So it's like there is more diversity, but there's so much trolling, and it's just about, you know, how do we stop that trolling and that hate from coming in?
Yeah. That's probably even more relevant now when we are living our lives online all the time, because we don't have any choice, like we're stuck at home. And obviously if like our parents or like whoever is that sort of negative influence, like we are around them all the time as well. So we basically need a massive campaign for parents and schools, and also kind of increasing diversity and examining our kind of internalized fat phobia. as a root of that. Yeah, that sounds like something that's maybe feasible to do. Like if we all got in a room together after this lockdown finishes, let's try to cook something up. I can see that Elena has appeared, which means that we are ready to take some questions from the audience.
Hi everyone. So we've got 6 questions that have come in. So I'll ask, this first one is specifically for Kaitlin. So Kaitlin, just, I know you've kind of touched on it already, but just if you could expand on kind of what you feel are the big systematic issues faced by fat women and how they're different to body image issues faced by non-fat women.
Of course, yeah. So I think the biggest one that needs to be talked about is medical fat phobia. Fat people are way too often just prescribed weight loss as treatment. You know, I myself have gone into a doctor's surgery with, you know, a torn ligament in my ankle and they've just told me to lose weight. You know, it's just things like that. Fat people are denied treatment, they're denied proper care, they're denied their dignity in hospitals a lot less than, you know, a lot more, sorry, than thin people are. You know, the fact that you're less likely to get hired compared to, you know, or promoted compared to a thin co-worker. The fact that it's incredibly more difficult for fat women to buy clothes, especially when you start getting above, for example, a size 28. A lot of people who introduce plus size lines in their clothing companies don't tend to go above a size 28. And, you know, I hate to say, there are a lot of people you're not catering to when you do that. You know, and then there's also other things on the other side of that, like, you know, just being shouted abuse on the street. I can't count the amount of times that I've had abuse shouted at me. People physically grabbing onto me and stopping me and making me talk to them. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that fatness affects, you know, people like me different than it would thin people.
Great, thank you for that. The next question is, how can we continue to decolonize body image and beauty standards in a society that is so Eurocentric? Anyone?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think definitely it does depend on the person, on each person's personal journey as well, and where they are with their body image. I think a huge part is, you know, definitely not following that many accounts that might, you know, endorse too many products that you know won't make you happy on social media. So I think definitely doing that and surrounding yourself with peers that really do value you for yourself, and not necessarily, you know, something that's not too built on things just revolving around body image. I think definitely a lot more work in terms of working in ways that can keep you positive amongst peers and what you follow on social media as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, especially with that word like decolonize and Eurocentric, and there's so many factors that go into body image, but I think it's really important to look at racism, and I think it is very important to look at fat phobia when you're discussing these things. Until we, you know, help dismantle those things, I think it's going to be quite difficult to get past this, you know, Eurocentric, you know, you have to be thin, like long blonde hair, perfect eyes, perfect skin. It's going to be very hard to tackle those things without tackling the things that cause them, which is racism and fat phobia.
I do think a lot of people are subconsciously racist, and, you know, like just subconscious. I see it on TV, for example, all the time on these morning TV shows. They say things that are completely racist almost every single day, yet it's just like, just goes by the by, like, you know, it's as if nothing happened. And I'm sure it's probably the same for like fat phobia. And so I think these things need to be taken more seriously, and whoever regulates these things needs to take it more seriously as well.
And it's something that came out in the, you know, in the report, like there was lots of conversations around how certain beauty standards were which are now like held and elevated as being like the most beautiful, have been this, you know, not the standard, but like very prevalent within, you know, people of color. And yet it was never acceptable until it was white people presenting with those same features. And now it's seen as beautiful. And yet it's only acceptable if you've got those body features but you're white. Like it's clear, and it's happening in Scotland, you know.
I feel like that, I mean, that's kind of like when I was modeling, for example, you know, my hips were not the right size, but literally they could never be that size because of the way that my body is shaped. Whereas now, yeah, you get people like obviously Kim Kardashian, who's got that body through, you know, enhancements, and people are like flaunting for it. And it came up in the study that so many people mentioned their names. Yeah, you know, like there's people that have been around forever that have had that body, and it was never, you know, seen in the same way.
Yeah.
I think as well, like I remember reading in the report, someone mentioned like their eyebrows, and obviously like I've always had really thick eyebrows, but when I was in high school, it was like the worst thing. I honestly, I hated it, and now people come up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, I love your eyebrows," and it's like, oh, well, it's not really changed. So, you know, it's like, I don't know if we are that Eurocentric. I think right now, beauty standards, it's kind of a mixture of like Kardashians and like other, like, I don't think the Kardashians look European or American. They kind of look, you know, exotic. You know, that kind of like exotic beauty. It's like you don't really know where they're from, but a lot of, you know, Black people have looked like that for ages, and no one has said, "Oh my God, you're beautiful." So I think there's this ambiguousness, I think, that's becoming more prevalent. But I think we're following trends,
Yeah.
but we're not seeing diversity. Like people have said to me, real women have curves, and like that makes me feel terrible because I have very small chest, so that's like not, you know, am I not a real woman? So I think we're still following a trend, even if it's not Eurocentric or whatever.
Definitely see a lot of trends changing from when I was in high school and looking at magazines or newspapers or just the sort of tabloid headlines in your face, and seeing what was, you know, prevalent in the headlines then versus now. You're seeing trends and things just change almost overnight on what is like, what's like hot right now and what's not. And then all these, it's just the constant bombarding of how somebody should look. There was an artist who used the Instagram algorithm to design what was perceived as like the perfect face, and a lot of it was, you know, people's impressions of the Kardashians and just all the sort of someone who was designed to look perfect, quote unquote, but didn't actually look. It didn't look right because there's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
It's not an actual thing. So researching the artists that are doing a lot of research within social media, you can see just how much of the design of the whole thing is just made to have people almost obsessing over this unattainable lifestyle and way, which just isn't, it's not realistic. And I think once people have more of that, once it's more of an understanding that it's not realistic and it is just, it's almost like, you know, there was a journalist who said it was like a mantelpiece, and you just put, you know, the best thing, your best things on social media, then you realize that it's not as real as people perceive it is, but it's not.
And with your, you know, Kiana, what you saying about your eyebrows is just so like such an example of how things keep evolving and changing. And then when you start to, you know, become part of the body positive movement, and you learn all about capitalism, and you learn how smart it is to make us keep trying to achieve and change, and like, what's the next thing, and like, okay, well, I've achieved that, so, you know, but then you still can't be happy. It's very smart to make us keep being on this treadmill. And once you learn about you know, what's perpetuating it, you can, like, you know, start either to reject it, get angry about it, or stay on it, whatever you want to do. But it's just a really clear when you get within the world of body positivity to kind of recognize that capitalism is at the root of it all.
Yeah.
Great. So we've got a few more questions, and I'm going to ask the ones that are slightly more upsetting, because I have a couple that means we can end on a positive note. We're going to leave them till the end. I've got a question here, and it's regarding social media, and it's about, obviously, with the current situation in COVID-19, would you expect to see any change to these findings now that young women are spending even more time on social media?
No. I think that this, especially with this whole, you know, we've got all this time, so why don't we do something productive? How about you start working out 5 days a week? How about you go on a diet and you'll emerge from quarantine as a brand new person, you know? So I don't think that all this time on social media is going to have a positive. Unless, you know, there's more people, for example, everyone in this panel discussion keeps doing the work and keeps putting out there about, you know, how we can approach our bodies differently. But there is a lot of, you know, like, we must self-improve while we're in isolation, we must lose weight, we must do this. So I think this is maybe gonna have a slightly negative effect on people.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Even last night I had this dream about, I don't know if you guys know what a Peloton bike is, but it's basically a spinning bike. And like in one of my like WhatsApp groups, we were talking about it, and I was like, I kind of forgot about it, and then I was like, maybe I do need one of those. and I looked last night, and their sales are up like 85%.
Wow.
I guess also because people can't go to the gym and stuff, but I do feel like people being on social media more is only going to have a more negative impact. Although I was thinking when Danni was talking that actually we're in a time where we have the most control over the content that we consume. You know, like on YouTube, there's people making their own content. This was never happening before. You know, you had to watch TV and you had to read magazines, which was all made by pretty much 6 different companies, and now there's so many individuals. So we actually have the power, but it's whether you decide to take that power and actually just watch who you want to watch rather than these sort of mainstream people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have 2 questions here that are definitely linked. So the first question is, does anyone have any thoughts on Adelgate yesterday? And I have to say, when we saw all that happening, we were like, thank goodness we're posting this report tomorrow. And then the second question, which obviously linked to that, is how do the panelists view things such as weight loss before and after pics and sharing them on social media? Obviously, understandably, some people may want to share their progress and hard work. And is there kind of any way that you could do this without potentially having a negative impact on someone else?
I think the thing that I find most disturbing about this whole Adele thing is that people aren't actually talking about her like she's a person now.
Yeah.
She is this representation of something that she never intended to be a representation of, you know, and people are criticizing her, and then you just forget that you're talking about a person. As somebody who has been involved in the body positive movement for so long, it's looked down upon to intentionally lose weight. And I understand that. I'm very anti-diet culture. But I think we also need to just let people be. I think we don't understand, none of us are millionaires, A-list celebs, and we don't know the pressure that those people are under. Especially because she entered that world as a fat person, you know. I can't imagine what she went through as a fat woman and that level of, you know, fame.
So young as well. She was...
Yeah, what was she, 18, 19 or something? Yeah, and I think that if she wanted to lose weight, just let her lose weight, you know. I think the negative effect that it has is that people are now thinking that this is easy, that we could all be Adele, that we could all lose this weight, but we're not all millionaires. We don't all have access to these specialists and nutritionists and personal trainers, and we don't have the time or the money to even begin to think that we could do what Adele has done. So I think that's where the negativity comes in, and obviously all the championing of the fact that she's lost weight is very harmful. You don't know why someone has lost weight, you don't know how someone has lost weight. You know, you could be complimenting somebody on their weight loss, and really you could be, you know, complimenting on their disordered eating, which a lot of dieting is, you know. But yeah, if she wants to lose weight, she can lose weight. That's, you know, that is my opinion, but it's harmful. Before and after pictures, to me, just show, like, this is where my worth is, you know.
Yeah.
I'm worth more in this next picture. And I think that's where we all need to be careful when sharing these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
No, you can talk.
I was going to say, like, if people don't know why in the body positive movement it's considered not cool to show before and after pictures. It's, I mean, maybe everyone knows this, but it's because it's demonizing the before. It's saying that body was wrong in some way. And the thing is, like, as Kaitlin said, a part of body positivity is body autonomy. We do not get to have a say on what somebody else does with their body. Like, that is just not okay. Like, you are allowed to do with whatever you want with your own body. That is your right. You own it. You don't get to have a say on what someone else does with their body. So, like, somebody can lose weight, somebody can put on weight, someone can tattoo their whole body, so, you know, whatever it is, they get to do that. They also get to use their social media the way they want to use it. And they get to put the before and after picture. They get to talk about their journey. They get to do whatever they want to do. We want people to kind of recognize the impact that has on other people. But we also say, if you get to choose what information you take in. So it's your responsibility to decide what you see. And so that's important as well. Like, we want people to recognize why this might not be helpful, but also you get to do what you like. It's up to us to make the steps to, like, look after ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What I find so shocking, actually it's not shocking, but what really annoyed me about the Adele picture was the comments, every single one, oh my God, you look so amazing, you look so amazing. So it's basically saying, okay, so what, you didn't look amazing before. And that really annoyed me. And you see that all the time. Even I feel like if somebody puts makeup on, somebody might be like, oh, you look so amazing. And it's like, well, what are you trying to say? So I always try and not do that with people, because I just don't think it really works out.
And Adele's voice is, you know, she's immensely talented, and it's that part that's you know, that's a huge part of her that you can't compare to before and after pictures of herself, because I've been seeing the comments as well, and it is all just loads of you look amazing, and she has always been amazing, and she's always been so much more than just what her appearance is, because she's made it apparent through her personality and the songs that she puts out there. And I think that's something that people should really definitely, it's nobody's place to comment on somebody's image. So I think it's something that, you know, it was her birthday, so, you know, celebrate the fact that she was having a good time. That's a good thing. But I don't think, yeah, it definitely is to then start, especially with before and after photographs, people are so much more than their appearance, and to then compare yourself with a previous image of yourself, it's as if where you started isn't good enough when it always has been. You know, it's your body is with you through all the journeys, so it's to nourish it and be there for it as well, and to celebrate if it is a fitness journey or any kind of journey, to be more than the before photograph, because everyone's presence of this is valuable.
So because we're trying to keep this under an hour, I know there's some more questions that have come in, but I'm just going to go and ask the ones that I'd planned to do last, because Zoom exhaustion is a thing. We do not always want to be in front of our screens. So it's two questions that are kind of complementary. So one is, how can we raise the platforms of influencers with non-conforming bodies and beauties? And then the other is, I'd like to hear more about the role the panel believes positive role models can have in changing negative views of body image. And I think hopefully we can end on a nice light note, and obviously we all want your recommendations as well of how we can curate our Instagram feed.
What I did, and this is more specifically if you're kind of like putting yourself out there, on Instagram you can choose keywords that you don't want to see and you don't want people to comment in your posts. So for example, I have like the word obesity, or, you know, more sinister words like kill and, you know, things like that, because that's some of the things I've heard like directed towards me. So you can do that stuff, but I think unfollow every single account that makes you feel bad about yourself in a way that isn't going to lead to you educating yourself and becoming better. You know, if they're telling you that you need to lose weight, just unfollow them. You don't need to see that. If they're being critical in a way that is going to lead to your self-development and your education on a matter, whether it be fat phobia or, you know, ableism or racism, then, you know, do the work. But if they're making you just feel like crap about yourself, just don't have them in your feed anymore.
Yeah. I think social media is a tool to educate. So as soon as you feel bad about accounts or pages that don't bring you joy, you can mute or you can unfollow. And I think it's so important to follow healthy and good accounts that bring you joy and bring you growth at this time, especially because of lockdown and because there are a lot more reasons to be on screens, to see people and to communicate with other people. I think the most important thing is to curate and compose your social media into something that you really want to see, that brings you happiness, as well as, you know, hopefully reaching out to other people as well if you put yourself out there.
Does anyone else want to come in as like a parting thought?
I think for me it's actually about just stepping back from all of it and being like, right, this is how I look, and whether I look like this or not, it kind of doesn't matter. It's more about how talented I am or what I do with my life. So I think it's actually just stepping back and being like, well, I can't really change my physicality that much, but what am I doing in terms of like my life? What do I actually want to do? And I think all the stuff that I follow on Instagram, it's usually like nature or just like, I know, people doing something that they love, like gardening or music or, you know, so I think we just all maybe criticize our looks and put too much importance on how we look. And it is important, but at the end of the day, I feel there's a lot more that there is to life, just personally.
I think it's for me it's really about like gratitude for your body and taking the time to like be with your body, as you were saying, like stepping back and trying to take time away from other influences, which is basically everyone else apart from yourself. And so, you know, even just like looking in the mirror and just like looking at yourself and really taking it in and being grateful and think about all the good things that your body has done and every amazing thing that it can do. Yeah.
And us being part of this body positive movement and taking up space within this movement, if we say that we are, I think it's really important that we have a responsibility to make sure that we are sharing the right people that we suggest people to follow, and we platform other people who we appreciate and we think that they're talking sense and to our followers, so that they can follow them also, and we can, you know, move aside and elevate other people. And you talked about role models, and I have heard, because I've worked with you before in regards to sport and how we can stop people, from young girls from dropping sport at quite a young age, and that came up as a huge way. Role models as a huge way to like encourage people to stay in the sport. And they talked about Serena Williams, the Williams sisters, being a great example of how to, you know, bodies that are not necessarily like feminine. And I think that's a really good point, and it would be amazing if we could get even Scottish celebrities or, you know, people at a certain level to be role models in the realms of body image, I think that would be really impactful.
Great. Patrizia, do you want to wrap up our session?
Sure. So I just wanted to say that we'll be continuing that conversation on all of our digital channels throughout the month of May. So we are at Young Woman Scot. And if you check out our channels today, we also included handles of all the speakers today. So please go and follow them. And if you didn't have a chance to ask your question, like that's the way to do it. And yeah, just follow all the activity and let us know what surprised you about the research. Let us know what you think our next step should be. Let us know how we should do that campaign that we were talking about. Just keep engaging and hopefully something really good and something really positive will come out of it. And we're really excited to be part of this work. And thank you so much to all the panelists for tuning in despite the lockdown and sort of the very different way of living. I'm so glad that we were still able to do this event. And I'm so glad that all of you were able to join us. And have a great bank holiday. And yeah, keep checking all the activity that will be happening. We have some amazing events lined up still.
Thank you for having me. This was a great chat.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.